Hey guys, it's Christy, and today I'm going to film the rest of my wrap-up for ALPHABETHON. It ended yesterday. I did really well. You'll find out how. Oreo was eating a giant treat and is now done, so my plan was to get it done before he was done eating, but what are you gonna do? So I believe that I left off on the 16th. So I'm gonna go from there, what I read page-wise. I read 115 pages of Orphan Monster Spy and 40 pages of Counting by Sevens on the 16th. On the 17th, I read 24 pages of Bring Me Their Hearts, 58 pages of Counting by Sevens, and 19% of my so-called Bollywood life. On the 18th, I read 55% of my so-called Bollywood life and 47 pages of Counting by Sevens. On the 19th, I finished Paranoia, it's Paranoia, a Chant, and that was a short story by Stephen King. I read 28 pages of Nana, which is another short story by Stephen King. I read 49 pages to finish Counting by Sevens and 26% to finish my so-called Bollywood life, and then I read 9% of Ken's, which I decided not to continue and changed my K-book. On the 20th, I read 38% of The Stars at October Bend and 7 pages to finish Nona. And I finished Uncle Otto's Truck, which was a short story by Stephen King, and read 5% of When the Lights Go Out. On the 21st, I read another 5% of When the Lights Go Out. On the 22nd, I read 12% of The Stars at October Bend, 26 pages of Bring Me Their Hearts, and 5% of When the Lights Go Out. On the 23rd, I read 62 pages of Bring Me Their Hearts, 26% of The Stars at October Bend, and 17% of When the Lights Go Out. On the 24th, I read 24% to finish The Stars at October Bend. I read the whole book of Zombie Family by Darren Shan. I also read all of For Owen, which is a short story by Stephen King, Oreo's Thursday. And I read 57 pages of Killer Chef, which was just like one of those book shots. I have it here, I'll show you after. And 12% of When the Lights Go Out. On the 25th, I read 75% of You Know Me Well and 68 pages to finish The Killer Chef and 38 pages of Bring Me Their Hearts. On the 26th, I read 258 pages of X Omnibus, that is a graphic novel, and 22 pages to finish Bring Me Their Hearts, and also I read 3% of When the Lights Go Out. On the 27th, I read 25% of You Know Me Well to finish that, 6% of The Lies You Never Told Me, 100 pages to finish X Omnibus, and I also read a short story, Jerusalem's Lot, and I read 7% of When the Lights Go Out. On the 28th, I read 44% of The Lies You Never Told Me, 13% of When the Lights Go Out. I finished Strawberry Spring and Quitters Incorporated, which were both short stories by Stephen King, and I also finished Rat Queens Volume 1, which was a graphic novel. On the 29th, I read 58% of The Lies You Never Told Me to finish that off, and I read all of Victor Laval's The Destroyer, which was a graphic novel, and I got to like 95% of When the Lights Go Out, and then I stopped counting, but I know that I just finished the last 5% of When the Lights Go Out the other night, so that's like broken down by day. If we want to break down the books that I read, and I'll tell you like how I read them, like audio, and ebooks and whatnot. Okay, for A, I read Autopsy. Hold on, I need my books a little closer. For A, I read Autopsy Room 4, which was a short story by Stephen King, which is in this book. For B, I read Bring Me Their Hearts, which was an ARC that I received. I won from an Instagram giveaway, I believe. Counting by Sevens was my C book, and I read it on ebook. Defy the Stars was my D book, and I listened to it on audiobook. For E, I read Everything's Eventual, which was a short story in Everything's Eventual by Stephen King. For F, I read For Owen, which was a short story by Stephen King. I can't remember. there's another Stephen King book too. It's Skeleton Crew, and I can't remember if the short story was in Night Shift or Skeleton Crew, so one of those. For G, I listened to Glimpse by Jonathan Mayberry on audiobook. For H, I read Happiness, A to Z, boom. For I read the ebook version of If There's No Tomorrow by Jennifer L. Armentrout. For P, I read the short story Jerusalem's Lot by Stephen King. I believe it's in either this or Skeleton Crew. For K, I decided to read Killer Chef, which was a book short, very short, by James Patterson. For L, I had two. I had finished 38% of Lifelike, which I was actually listening to on audio before the readathon started, but I also listened to Lies You Never Told Me, and that was on audio, obviously. For M, I listened to My So-Called Bollywood Life by Nisha Sharma. For N, I read Nona, which was either in this or Skeleton Crew. For O, I listened to audio version of Orphan Monster Spy. For P, I read Paranoid. It was either in this or the other one. For Q, I read Quitters Inc., which was also in this or the other one. For R, I don't have my iPad, but I read a graphic novel called Rat Queens Volume 1, which I borrowed from my library. For S, another short story by Stephen King called Strawberry Spring. For T, I read The Stars at October Bend. I listened to it on audio. For U, I read Uncle Otto's Truck, which was a short story by Stephen King. For V, I read on my iPad a graphic novel called Victor LaValle's Destroyer, which I borrowed from my library. For W, I read an ebook version of When the Lights Go Out. It was an e-arc. For X, I used my iPad and I read X Omnibus Volume 1, which I borrowed from my library. For Y, I listened to You Know Me Well by David Levithan and Nina LaCour on audio. And for Z, I did the audio version of Zombie Family by Darren Shan. So yes, I read something for every single letter of the alphabet. Woo, that was a success. It was fun. It was really fun actually because I changed up basically my whole TBR. So out of the TBR that I had picked, the only books that I read were Defy the Stars, My So-Called Bollywood Life, Orphan Monster Spy, and that's it. So the rest I was like, oh, I'm gonna do short stories because I feel like I can actually do this. So that was super fun. I'm gonna leave all the information for ALPHABETHON down below, and the next round should be coming up soon. I totally forgot what the letter is, sorry. But yeah, I will talk to you guys soon. See ya.